side are things that you would do before your lesson. So the first thing that I have is purposeful planning, and then I have a couple of offshoots on that. So one is data, and then one is the question, what do they need, they being students? Like, I don't think that we should just teach something because that's the next lesson in the OLS, or we should just teach something because that's the next thing on my checklist of standards. But we need to look at our data and decide what's the most important thing for us to teach, and teach that so that we're not wasting time. The second thing that I have is essential information, standards, and objectives. So kind of going with the first thing, but what are the power standards? What are the things kids really need to know? Do I need to spend a whole day talking about this when it's not really a power standard, it's not really important? And then I have timing and pacing, which is something that goes along the whole lesson, so that's why it's on the side. And just in my personal experience in watching lessons, I find that that's a big struggle area for a lot of teachers, is timing within the virtual environment. Some teachers don't give enough time, and it's like, yeah, ask a question, and because you don't have that immediate response from students, you're just like moving on without giving wait time. And some teachers have the opposite problem, where they spend 30 minutes of wait time and students really only need it at 5. And then on this side, I have involved and committed, which I used that as kind of an umbrella statement for all of that communication. Are teachers involved and committed in the school? Are they participating? Are they attending? Relationships and culture. I meant that with students and staff. Do you have positive relationships with your students and with your teammates? And then I have responsive instruction. So kind of think of that as differentiation, as are you responding to your students' needs as they arise within a lesson. And then down the middle, I have things that you would see within a lesson. And I purposefully didn't include engagement. And I didn't include engagement because I feel like if you have all these things, then you have engaged students. So I have student inquiry at the very top, because I think that student inquiry is most effective when students are doing it at the beginning of a lesson, when they have that opportunity to raise questions, because that ups their involvement in the lesson. If they've asked those questions that the rest of the lesson is going to address, then they're more curious and they're going to listen more. Then I have student-led learning and tasks. This is something that Dr. Ernest and I talked about a lot last year. It's just one of the areas that I think that we don't focus on enough in our evaluation and in our discussions about instruction is, what is the student doing in this lesson? We're always looking at what the teacher's doing, but what's their role and then their involvement? To go along with that, I have peer collaboration, and I mean that within your lessons. So are your students working together? Are they building their understandings as a group or in partners? Then I have quality questioning. So are teachers asking the right types of questions and the right frequency of questions to get students thinking? Depth of content, which I just think speaks to, are your lessons rigorous? Are you an expert in your content knowledge, or are you just kind of grazing the top? Meaning making and real world connections. Does what you're teaching matter to students, and how can we make it matter to students? And then at the end I had mastery, and then after I listened to Chris I added the word growth. Mastery and growth, after all these other things, did students understand, and can they move on and progress to the next thing? So that's what I came up with.
The top, because I feel like that trickles down. You can't have the next stage if you don't have a relationship with the students, if they don't respect the teacher, they don't want to be part of your classroom. Nothing that follows is going to be as worthwhile as it can be. And then I thought next you would flip over to individual students considered, such as my red group. I know, each student in that group's goal, the ones that come on a regular basis, the ones that don't, is my goal to get this student to class, or is it to keep them in class? Do that, in our setting, our kids kind of get to choose, they all get to take a ticket and decide which class they're going to come to. So what are you doing to make them want to be in your classroom? And what are you doing to meet those individual goals? Are you teaching too high for the small group they're in? That kind of thing. And then, like I said, these aren't explicit, but I'd want them to be. I put quality content, and then kind of along with Jill's idea, You know, instead of saying, you know, you have this, you have this, you have this, have you checked off each one of these slides? Maybe make it a menu. Has the teacher demonstrated at least 2 of the Teach Like a Champion concepts? Has the teacher demonstrated 2 items of this list to, you know, higher level thinking, questioning, partner work? You know, we've talked about how we do have small periods of time, and this is a small snapshot. So instead of maybe looking explicitly for these items, we're looking for at least one of them from this section, one of them from this section, something like that. And then I thought grade level knowledge and developmentally appropriate content. Again, you know, are you teaching to the right standards? Are you teaching the core standards? That's where we break down some of Lacey's. And then standards and goal aligned. So that was kind of like Byron's top section, where he talked about, you know, are you teaching backwards? Do you even have a goal? Do you know what direction you're heading? You know, in kindergarten, we want them to know all their letters by December, because studies show that leads to reading success. Do you know that? Are you working towards that goal? You know, does this lesson make sense in the big picture and in the small picture of things? So that was my very generalized.
You have to have good communication with everybody all around. You have to have good communication with your families, with your students, with your staff. So that was my first thing. Leadership, that goes with being a good leader with your team, being a good leader, having opportunities like FLA, going to community events, and taking opportunities to give back to the school in different ways like that. Team collaboration, I think that's super important to be a good team member. In my situation, I have to be a good team member to both the 7th and 8th grade team, so I have to collaborate well with those teachers, as well with my other intervention team. Data-driven instruction, that's super important for me to be able to use the data to provide a really good instruction for my students. So that is something that would need to be evaluated for me. Student engagement, that is something that I would be evaluated on to show that I am providing good lessons that are engaging, that reach the students, that are something that show that I understand the content, that I understand how to teach math, and that I am reaching them in that data that I'm identifying for them. I think this is a good piece that should be evaluated on. Data management. That is something not only for my job, I think for everybody, that we have a lot of data that we have to constantly input, and we should be evaluated on that. I spent a good chunk of my time putting data in, so that's something I would like to be evaluated on. And then student growth. That is something just to show if we are actually being effective at what we teach, and to show if we are helping the students to grow.
I thought also in broad terms. The first one being professionalism. That's one of our core values. And then breaking that down in the rubric, in Byron's words, do your job. But I feel like that job needs to be defined. Because, and I think we need to have that defined in the rubric. Is my job to meet a metric that K-12, is my job to have them do Study Island whenever they haven't even got the lesson? Like, is my job to meet some metric, or is my job to put in a total view note, or is my job to have so many visits to, or events that I go to? I think that is it's one of my pain points from being here for years and years, is what is my job? Or what are the elements of my job that are most important? And some of the things I do, I feel like shouldn't, if they're not impacting students, why are we doing it? I don't want to just do something, check off something. So professionalism, I think that we need to define job in that category. It's a big word. Then environment, strategies, and behaviors is our next core value, and that goes along with classroom culture. And when you are in my classroom, do you have to see my pledge, or do you just see it kind of like the engagement thing? Do you have to see and hear me say it at the beginning of every class? Or do you just know that it's happening because the children are not talking over each other, because the children are, I'm trying to teach my children to ask each other for help. So, and they're getting, like, in just 3 lessons, they're getting so good at it. And so, like, you can see that. We learn from our mistakes. That's one of the things that's in my pledge on the second board, but you just see that in my lesson. So I think that that classroom culture thing should be defined. And then, another one of our core values, instruction. And I called this, I like the menu idea, and you brought up teach like a champion, but I called it a TLART, teach like a revolutionary teacher. And, but with that being, your RT, where are you right now as a teacher, and what strategies can you use in your classroom to get to the next level? And what are some things on the menu that I pick from on a daily basis during my instruction? And what are some things on the menu that maybe my coach or my evaluator can say, hey, why don't you add some more? So defining some of those things that really are imperative to have in effective instruction versus, again, a checklist of what you came in to look for. Then our last one is, our last core value is accountability. And with that, I put in the data-driven instruction, making sure you're using your data effectively, which then ultimately should show growth. So within that accountability piece, we're being held accountable for our students' growth. And then also within that accountability piece, accountability to my team, accountability to the school, accountability to the learning coach, and accountability, how do I hold the learning coach accountable, as well as accountability of the students whenever they're in my classroom.
Because right now, I think it's gotten better, but still a lot of the same faces pop up on like every committee. It's like the same person doing the same things, and there's a core group of people that do everything. And if we're looking at it more like, we want you to get really strong at this, then maybe that empowers other people to take that on, rather than feeling like I just have to, if I'm going to volunteer, then I'm going to end up doing everything and I'm going to be on all these committees, and that might help to get more diversity, I guess, amongst our different options.
Oh, that was pain.
So we got to keep student growth somewhere.
So maybe
we don't have to have that
That's where
discussion now, but
Joey's
it's
mind
the
was
same
about
thing.
to explode
maybe
the other
if
day.
we emphasize
thought we marked
mastery
out
here in the
there.
sense of like in this one lesson, students are demonstrating mastery. Growth in terms of accountability means throughout the year, are they growing instructionally? Does that distinction make more sense if we look at it like
I
that?
still like it better in accountability personally.
Move it there. Value is educating, supporting, and empowering our teachers, staff, and families.
6.
And I feel like when you have communication, then you have the ability to be empowered. Without it, then you just kind of fall flat. So I don't know, since with that language of the whole core value, I feel like it fits best there as an overlaying
Do we have to
concept.
use every stick, or can we get rid of that stick and make some replacements?
Oh, those are